back to Untangled. Today's guest is Jason Ogle, lead UX design engineer at CACI and a force behind next gen intelligence UX. Jason led the creation of Clues AIs for Dark Blue, a first of its kind dark web OSINT feature, because y'all know I have no idea what that means, so tell us, that tripled actionable intel and boosted user retention by 85%, while consolidating 6 tools into a single scalable ops dashboard and design system that supports billions of records. He's also the creator of the acclaimed User Defenders podcast, which is awesome, by the way, where he's interviewed icons like Seth Godin and Jared Spool. From accessibility in government systems to AI-powered workflow, Jason's craft consistently turns complex missions into human, elegant experience. Everybody, welcome Jason. All right.
Thank you
Don't you
for that
love it?
kind
I was like,
intro.
I didn't want to send it to you because I was like, I want to give him an epic intro, right? You deserve an epic intro. So
That makes me sound really smart and really effective. I appreciate that.
I love it. It's like not until you put it all together, you're like, damn, I did a lot of stuff. All right. So Jason, thank you so much for getting up with me early this morning to do this recording. Let's start with the fun question. How did you get into user experience?
It started with my love of comics and again Wolverine and then I just kind of kept drawing, and then my dad brought home, it was actually prior to this, my dad brought home an Apple IIe computer, and then shortly after a Commodore Amiga computer, and that was cutting edge at the time for graphics and things. So we're talking 1980s. So I had this interesting kind of like computer technology background. My dad was a literal rocket scientist. So he was an actual space engineer, worked on all the Apollo missions and all the space shuttles launches. So yeah, he was a pretty legendary guy in his time, even though he didn't realize it, or didn't, he was too humble to realize it. But anyway, he brought technology into our home, and I'm grateful for that. And then I just kind of got this love of comics and art. And so fast forward to the 90s, I'm at lunch doing a dead end day job of, corporate lease driving cars. And one of my associates brings in a laptop that was about, 6 inches thick, it seemed like at the time. And then he, at lunchtime, he was on this website called America Online. And I was like, what is that, man? What are you doing? And he's like, oh, I'm chatting online. I'm like, what's that? Like, what do you mean chatting? He's like, yeah, there's people all over the world right now in this chat room that I'm talking. And I was like, that's crazy. Like, no way. Let me try that. And then he let me get on there for, the rest of the lunch hour. And I was like, this is crazy. Like, I can't believe I'm talking to somebody on this side of the world, and anyway, I got, of course, everyone was getting like, a CD a day, it seemed like, in the mail from America Online for, 90 free hours or whatever it was, to dial up to the internet. And so I got online and I started exploring, and I discovered a feature called Personal Publisher. And what I realized is that I could create my own web page, and they were going to give me some very rudimentary tools to do so. And so when I started creating my own web page, where I could drag and drop stuff in, and I could kind of create my own kind of personality, put it out there, and then like even do some code. And I was like, I had already learned A Basic from my Commodore Amiga days. Making her talk was one of my favorite things. I was like, I can make her say whatever I want. This is so cool, And so, and then I kind of like was able to start learning HTML, thanks to some of my heroes like Jeffrey Zeldman and Christopher Schmidt, some of the folks from the early days of the web, who really helped us all learn before Google or any of that was around. They were blogging, sharing everything they knew. So I just started diving in after that, after I hit publish on my first webpage, which was horrible. When you think about it, it was like, I probably had like, 100, it seemed like, like there were dozens of GIFs, animated GIFs, which was so funny to see that come back around, because it went away for a while, and now it's back in full force. But anyway, that was kind of like, it was literally love at first sight. I say that sometimes, like, I pushed publish, and then I was able to actually access my really horrible first landing homepage on America Online, and I realized anybody could do this. Anybody could see something I created. That was the magic for me. Like I was able to get creative and technical, and the marriage of those two was just everything. I'm like, I knew it at that moment. I'm like, this is what I want to do the rest of my life. And then I started freelancing after that because I couldn't get my foot in the door. It was really hard.
Right.
It's hard now. It was really hard then to get my foot in the door in this field. But I kept trying. I didn't give up, and it took me a few years. But I finally was able to get my first opportunity at an ad agency. So that's where it all began. It was called web design back then,
Web design.
kids. I
Web
was a
design.
webmaster.
The
Woo! I
early
loved it.
days. The
I
early
miss that
days.
title sometimes.
Oh man, I think it was easier. I think it was easier
Hmm.
then. And because if for no other reason, the bar was kind of low. It was just
It
like,
was very, very low.
just go design, go have fun, go see what it
Yes,
could do, right? Which is
exactly.
a lot. I feel like a lot of where we are right now. Just go see what it can do, right?
Yeah,
Thinking
exactly.
about that, I just love all the nostalgic feelings that came from the story. Is there anything you miss about the good old days?
Oh wow. There's actually quite a bit. Everything, it was like a wide open frontier, like they call it the World Wide Web, and it was like the wild west of the web. Even though there were constraints, like we were so adventurous at the time, we were breaking constraints left and right. And it was fun. We were like, this is exhilarating. What else can I break? What else can I hack? Like that's the only time I like the saying move fast and break things.
Yeah,
I hate it now because we're talking about a lot more humans and a lot more lives and livelihood at stake, that I don't like that at all. We can talk about that later if we want, but I liked it then because the web was just about creativity. It was just about exploring and pushing boundaries, and there were no rules, and we liked it that way. We were making it up as we went along, and I think what I miss the most is that creative, no limits creatively to what could be done. I'll definitely give a hat tip to Flash, even though we know it wasn't. It certainly it became a problem with folks who had disabilities. We didn't know it at the time.
yeah,
We weren't really thinking about that because there weren't that many people on the web at the time either. So we didn't know what we didn't know. And but I mean, honestly, like that technology, that tool really broke a lot of ground for the World Wide Web and what it evolved into. It started drawing a lot of folks in to experience what is this thing? What is it? What is people are creating cinematic experiences, and it's kind of fun. Speaking of nostalgia, like I've been seeing some of these sites that I used to frequent in the 90s. Like I'm seeing some of these folks kind of emerging again, like Too Advanced, for example. And it was nice. Eric Jordan just accepted my LinkedIn request the other day. And so, like, young folks listening, I feel like an old man. Get off my lawn. Let go and check out some of that stuff. Like go and look up Too Advanced, and you can see what the web looked like in the early days with Flash, and kind of how some folks like Eric Jordan and associates, and Todd Purgason, another one, Juxt Interactive, how they were just breaking ground left and right on creating super interactive experiences. And I almost look at it like the Apollo moon mission. Like my dad was a part of that, and I'm really proud of that. I didn't care when I was a kid. I really didn't. My dad and I butted heads a lot when I was growing up because I was a rebellious jerk often. But anyway, when I look at it this way, like the Apollo program, like we haven't done anything like that since. And that's crazy. Like with all the technology, they did this without Google. They did this with a pencil, paper, slide rule, and some really smart brains, and a lot of collaboration with a lot of really other smart people doing the same things. We haven't really seen the web since break as many creative boundaries, and I understand why. A lot of it is because the web has become so commercial now,
yeah,
and user experience. It's really, it is what it's all in the name. Like we are designing for users who we are hoping will open their wallets in some way, shape, or form to buy into what we're creating and what we're offering. So that's where the playing field completely shifted. That's where our playground and our sandbox became more of a corporate, structure box, where we got to kind of make sure everything's going to align. And then a lot as a result has become very templatized and almost homogenized. So I have mixed emotions about it. I realize that it has to be that way now because I love this industry. I love this trade. Like this field has been so good to me
Yeah.
and to my family. And I am grateful every single day that I can still wake up and turn my computer on and try to do good, try to make a difference in the people using what I'm creating. I'm humbled every time I think about it, that there's people using what I created and then to hear about it when you don't always get to
Yeah.
that, like, this is like one of the comments that's my favorite comment in the OSINT space is this is the best user interface I've ever used in any government intelligence product ever. Like that's the highest, like I never get tired of hearing that. But the reality is that we just like everything, like we evolve, we shift, we have to. Thankfully, we're adaptable. Now we all have got to contend with AI. What does that mean? I'm sure we'll probably talk about that a little bit. What does this mean for our field, our trade? I'm pretty grizzled. I've been there from the very beginning, and I'm really grateful for that. Like I've seen it go from, like we were talking about, like the original responsive web design where text went from the very left of the screen to the very right, and then if you moved your browser in, it guess what? It actually it was responsive to your,
And
that
we
those were
spent
the
so much
original.
time geeking about it. Like, look,
I
look.
know. The original websites were responsive, kids.
I love
They
it.
were boring as hell.
They were boring. Okay, so let's there's so many things to unpack there. So I'm making notes for things to come back to because you hit
Yeah.
a couple of things. One thing that I hope everyone takes away from that though, is just the time and energy that it took individuals to like learn those skills. Because like you said, we didn't have books we could go pick up. I mean, I remember
There weren't
everybody built
many.
out their own MySpace pages, right? Now they had a whole generation of designers and engineers, right, who were making their own experiences. But that takes time and dedication to learning something. So for my audience is it's the whole spectrum. So it's people who are brand new to UX, like what is it, and we're talking about the umbrella, right? As well as people who've been doing this a long time, and they're like, oh, should I still be here? What's next for me? Right? I'm still looking for the cool stuff. So let's kind of level set just a little bit. Can you tell my audience what it is that you do today?
Yeah. So today I am doing HCI for OSINT, which that stands for Open Source Intelligence. So I am a government contractor, and thankfully the shutdown has not affected us right now. I hope everybody can get back to work and kind of figure out how to agree on stuff. Like I mean that at a macro and at a micro level. So all that to say, I've been doing that since 2020, really since the Rona invaded and ruined everything. So yeah, and I've been a remote worker since, and I love it. Like I tell people all the time, like it's going to be really hard to get me back into an office. I there's just I see no reason for it. But anyway, I'm an introvert too, so take that as well. I'm an ambivert. I like people, but I need my space. Anyway, so what I'm doing now is I am working on creating products, especially focused for me. I'm focused on the human computer interaction parts of it and the user. That includes the user interface. That includes the UX, the user experience, research. We do a lot. We try to dig in. It's hard. That's one thing about any sort of intelligence product. It's pretty hard to get a hold of your users to do extensive as much research as you like. Thankfully, I have really, really strong intuition. I've used a lot of interfaces for a really long time now, and so thankfully, nearly everything I put out there is usable. And so I'm really glad for that. But what I'm doing is I'm trying to create and I believe I've been successful in doing that, and I continue to try to make it better, to create a really, really easy to use product that a digital product that will house nearly 7 billion records
Wow.
of data that we screen and counting. Like we get a million records a day if you think about it that way, and that's just with one service.
Wow.
So yeah, we are constantly we have a lot of records, and the benefit to that is that when I do my job well, I'm helping analysts to be able to put the pieces together on some really terrible people, sadly, in the world that are just trying to use the anonymity of the dark web that is granted to them, 3 layers of encryption, in order to do some really terrible things that they would never do if their name was right there in public. So we're that's my job, and if I do my job well, and I think I am, that we can give these analysts some really intuitive tools that they don't have to think about using. They always say good UX is invisible. I do believe that there's a lot of truth to that. No, people don't. When was the last time you thought about every interaction you were making on your iPhone or your Android or whatever? Like, when was the last time? You don't think about it. You just do it, and even kids can, like, at least with the iPhones, kids can pick up an iPhone or an iPad and actually figure it out in less than a couple minutes, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So, that's what I'm doing today, and it's both exhilarating, intimidating, a little terrifying, but super satisfying. I sleep really good at night knowing I'm helping to give the bad guys a bad day.
I love that. Thinking about your interfaces, this is, I guess, let me word it this way. How is designing for intelligence different than designing in the commercial space?
Oh, wow. That's an interesting question. It's very, very different. The One of the main differences is all the data that you have to account for. And so that's the thing. I was very honored to be able to write an article for I always forget the UX. It's a very popular UX pub. But it was all about how AI is not going to take our jobs. Like, we don't have to worry about it. Like, if you're an enterprise UX level designer, like, you don't have to worry about it taking your job. I've been doing this for a little while, and I've never been able to do exactly the same thing twice with all the companies I've worked for. Every company, every data set, every single piece of the puzzle, it's unique and it's nuanced to that particular organization. Yes, there's generalizations. We're all trying to do similar things, but in different ways with different constraints. I've never been able to reuse the same user interface pattern more than once on the big picture stuff. So, like, rest assured, anybody out there listening that's really worried, if you've been doing this for a little bit, yeah, don't worry about it. There's always going to be a need for human in the loop. As long as you can continue proving your value and continue adding value to the business and to your users, like, just keep doing that. Like, there will always be a need for you, especially at the enterprise. There's so much nuance that it's going to take decades for AI to actually do it exactly right. I don't care what anybody says. Everybody who's saying that it's over, like, show me the data. I don't see the data yet.
Yeah.
So,
I think it'll definitely change to your point, but no, it's not over. It's too many
no.
things. And this is why I tell people, like those who are scared of AI, just try it. Right? You're scared of it because you haven't done anything with it yet. Go kick the tires, right? And go see what it can actually do. Pull back the curtain and see how it's actually made. And then a lot of those
Yeah,
fears and anxieties, I think, would go away. Um,
exactly right.
all right. So thinking about your career, so you said you got into this intelligence space around 2020.
Yeah.
What, if any, aha moments have you had? Like, oh, we're not in Kansas anymore. This is totally different.
Oh, geez. Yeah. Working. So I haven't always been in OSINT since 2020. I actually worked on some like defense projects, national defense, before this. And, like, there's some aha moments with kind of like the importance of what you're making without really knowing exactly what you're making. You
Mhm.
know what I mean? Like, there's that kind of weight on you of, like, wow, what I'm doing right now is actually critical to the defense of our nation, with if God forbid it came to, warfare and things like that. So, like, there's a lot of additional weight that's put on you in that capacity, we're like, I definitely don't want to screw this up. Like, I definitely want to make sure this makes sense and that I make sense of it. Because if I don't understand it, then whatever I make out of it, the users, the intended users, aren't going to understand it either. So that was a big for me, like coming into this space from always commercial prior, was a huge aha. And I was super, especially in the beginning, like really, really intimidated, because I had no idea what I was doing. And I was like, this is like the fish out of water. I felt like a fish out of water, honestly. So that took a lot of adaptation, and getting to know kind of the types of folks that work in this space. It's very different, and they have very different demands than like the commercial space. And I've worked at ad agencies. That was where I first started, and I'm really thankful for that experience to give me that background of like the importance of especially visual communication, art and copy. That was a really, really good foundation. I'd recommend any folks listening, you're just starting out, you're interested in this, like, don't ignore the importance of visual communication and graphic design. Even though I know you can tell AI and you can create a pretty compelling image or video in about 10 seconds, still don't ignore the importance of actual visual principles, because all AI is doing is it's just recycling everything that's already been put out by humans,
Yep.
right? Who are smart and who have done a lot of research and have put in their 10,000 hours.
Yep.
So that all it's doing is that you still it in order to produce great work partnering with AI, you have to still know why it's great. If you don't know why it's great, you're taking AI's word at everything, and you're just like trusting that it actually knows what it's doing. And it, frankly, folks, it doesn't know what it's doing yet, and it's going to be a while longer, I think, before it actually even has a part of a handle on.
I interviewed Ovetta Sampson, who was over UX and large language models at Google. And that's
Yes.
how she talks about AI. She's like, it is neither artificial nor intelligent, right?
I like
Taking,
that.
it is taking things that somebody's already put into it, right?
Yeah.
We'll tackle this other thing later because I don't want to start us down as a rant. But one thing though, that you mentioned that I'm probably going to cut up and blast out as much as I can was what you said about designers have to understand what it is you're building and why, right? Because again, you can't just make things flippantly, especially in your line. So, what are some things designers can do to make sure that they get it, right? I see sometimes designers are hesitant to ask questions, right? And it's like you realize like everybody else gets a pass. You have to get it. So what advice would you have for them?
Yeah, I think what you just said too, like raise your hand. Did you ever see that movie Big with Tom
Of
Hanks?
course.
Do
I
you?
was at a car museum here in Dallas and they have the Zoltaire machine. I was like, my
Yes.
husband's like, you want to make a wish? No, I saw the movie.
Yeah, I don't want to go back. Don't let me go back, God. Yeah. Too many painful lessons along the way. I'm good. I'm good. But yeah, there's a scene, like for anybody who is unfamiliar, Tom Hanks plays this kid who is just feeling all of these boundaries and constraints of being a kid. Like, for example, not being able to go on a roller coaster ride that he wants to go on. He's just too short and he's not big enough. So he makes a wish at the Zoltaire machine and he asks to be big. He wakes up, he's big. So he's like, this little kid in this adult's in this grown man's body. And that's where all the humor and satire come. It's fun. It's a fun ride. But the one thing that I think about often is in relationship to this line of work is when he worked at he got a job at a toy factory. They were designing toys, and he was in this little internal focus group, and the CEO was trying to pitch this idea he thought was a great idea. And I really love that there's a really good lesson in this scene, and it's how we should all be as not only designers but as product people. But this where Tom Hanks's character at the end, after the presentation the CEO gave, where he was so proud of this toy, that honestly, when you're looking at it, like even as an audience member, you're looking at this thing, you're like, this is dumb. And thankfully, Tom Hanks does what all of us want to do. He raises his hand whenever, the guy says any concerns, or he's like, he raises his hand and he's like, I don't get it. He's like, I don't get it. And I think that was a really good, like, it takes bravery to do that. It takes courage. Nobody wants to be, that's why a lot of us in school were trained, like, maybe by the kids making fun of us for like not getting it right away and raising our hands. And then it only takes one time, for a kid to like just say, you're dumb, you should just know this, you're holding all of us up or whatever, and we get that imposter syndrome from a very early age, where we're not willing to question, we're not willing to make sure we actually get it before we actually engage and we start doing what we need to do. So I think that all of us would, and again, not just designers, I think anybody working on anything that a human is going to use should always like make sure they get it, at least enough. You don't have to know how rockets work to be able to work in aeronautics, in space. It helps. Elon's done all right at kind of probably reading a lot of books and stuff. Like he's not a rocket scientist, but he basically has the education of one, because he dove in and he figured it out and he learned it. So like there's a lot of lessons in just trying to know at least enough to where you're confident enough to where you can make a difference in it. And so I think that will really help all of us. And I try to do that. And I'll be honest with you, like there's also another side to this that I think is really interesting, and it's worth considering. I think this is what's made me a good designer throughout my career. I know I learn just enough. I learn as much as I can, and if it's just enough, and especially in intelligence and all the data, like I'll be honest, there's a lot of times where I just got to make something, and I don't know how it works or how it's all going to work, but I know enough. But then there's that other side of me that almost that side that doesn't completely understand everything, that actually benefits the design, because I'm coming at it from an angle of somebody who's just looking at this for the first time.
Yep.
Right. So I think it's actually there's something called the curse of knowledge,
Mhm.
and it happens a lot. And I'm not going to single any sort of discipline out, but it happens a lot in certain disciplines where somebody just knows exactly all the ins and outs, and maybe it's more logical, where they don't feel like they need to actually explain things to someone who doesn't get it quite as much, because they already know it all. So they have the curse of knowledge. I think it's actually kind of a beautiful thing it is a beautiful thing to not have that as a designer, especially when you're creating stuff, because there's always something more to learn. And if you can maintain that growth mindset, you will do great things, and always know there's always something new to learn.
That what I love about that is that sweet spot. So one of my
Yeah.
clients, they design everything for the power user. But if you
Uh-huh.
design everything for the power user, how are you going to get new users, right? Like you have to understand there's always going to be this ramp up process, and not knowing creates that space where you can learn and see it from that different perspective. All right. So thinking about
100%.
in your space. So we acknowledge we may not know everything and that it's a lot on the line. So then how do you test your experiences thinking about who your users are?
Yeah, that's a great question too. I honestly, a lot of it is making something that I am really confident is going to work, and then just trying to get it in front of some folks before we push it out there. That's been probably the most effective way in this particular space to do it. As I was saying earlier, like it's quite difficult. There's a lot of constraints, unfortunately, especially in like secret type work in government, top secret. Like it's hard to get these folks, and these folks don't leave a skiff, and it's hard to get research tools inside of a skiff, a secret compartmental information something facility. And that's where these folks do like have the nation's top secrets, and they don't leave that room, right? So it's very difficult, especially in that space, to do research. You just do what you can. When I was in defense, working originally, in the defense program, we did whatever we could. We had a couple folks sometimes go to the air base. They would actually go where these folks are because it's hard to get them on the phone. It's hard to get them in front of a computer, and they would just go over there. They had clearances, and they would go over there, our researchers, and they would just get these folks, pin them down in a room. Hey, can I get 30 minutes of your time or whatever, and that's kind of how it's like guerrilla research. It's like that's how you have to do it, honestly and unfortunately. In this space, thankfully, it's the constraints are a little bit less defined as far as like we are dealing with open source, so it's not secret or top secret and all that. Like, this is information that's publicly available, so there's kind of a blessing in that. Like, I guess a blessing and a curse. The curse is that anybody can access this stuff, this content, and some of it's awful. But the blessing is that it's actually a lot easier to get folks to talk to you because they're not behind these firewalls. So again, honestly, a lot of it has to do with creating something that you are really confident. Again, intuition is huge in this field. You got to have really strong intuition, and you will not have it out the gate. You have to build that by getting some wins and getting as many as possible, right? You got to do that, and so your confidence will grow the more wins you get, and then the more of those you get, you'll be like, yeah, I know that worked. Internally, you'll be like, I know that worked before in the past. I know this is how humans interact with these components, and so I'm going to use these. And hey, you know what? I actually love my engineers a lot, so I'm going to reuse stuff. I'm not going to, as much as possible, I'm not going to create a new component if there's one that already does the job that's already in the system.
Mhm.
It's having empathy. It's not only for your users, but also for the fellow disciplines that are around you. And I think a lot of us forget that, especially starting out, that it's not just empathy for the users. That's critical. But it's empathy for the other disciplines, because in a way, in a weird way, your engineers are also users. Your product manager is also a user, right? Your stakeholders, they're also users in a weird kind of way. So it's important to consider their constraints as well when you're making these products. Did I answer the question?
You did. You did perfectly.
Okay.
Thank you. I
Yeah.
remember during our first chat, I think the question was, who at at these companies decided, you know what, we need a designer? Like, who said that? Like, how did
I
we
don't
get
know, but I
there?
love them.
So, what was the ask? What did they think they were asking you to come in and do?
Uh, yeah, make this product less engineering led.
Okay. Okay. All right.
Again, I love my engineers. I really have the utmost respect. But the reality is, and they would admit it, like their job is to make the thing work and be really, really creative with code and infrastructure and those constraints that they deal with. Engineers are incredibly creative. I never want to hear otherwise. That's very disrespectful to say that they aren't. They have to be creative every day. It's just a different kind of creativity. And now the reality is, and the reason that design and UX came along is because all of a sudden there was this influx when personal computing got humongous, as we were talking earlier in the origin story in the 80s, when personal, thanks to Bill Gates and Steve Jobs, we all had a computer in our house. Almost all of us, not everybody, but a lot of us did, and that's where it all began. And so because of that, guess what? There was a software problem where there was so much software needed, but not enough people to actually create it and craft it. So there were plenty of people to create it. There weren't very many people to craft it. And so the reality is, all the software bloat that was happening in the 70s and 80s, it came back to bite us all in the rear. And so thankfully there was some smart people, especially at Apple, who said this has to stop. And that's where we get greats like Don Norman, who really kind of created, I believe he was the creator of the term user experience. And so that's how this all happened. Thankfully, there was a realization that, well, the technology is great, but if nobody knows how to use it, like, it doesn't, that's only half the battle,
Yep.
right?
Fun
So we
fact.
need
That's
us.
Fun fact, that's how Usability Sciences got started. So my boss left IBM. He was introduced to usability testing at IBM. And he was like, when he got his golden parachute, and he's like, I'm going to take this and create a usability testing firm, because all of these companies are designing based on what the engineers can do. not what people want to do. Like that is like how this
Yeah.
thing got started.
Oh, that's cool.
I remember one time I was working with some engineers, and this was the moment that I realized, oh, y'all are just built different. We were working on
Yeah.
something for call center agents, and the guy he comes in, he's like, just teach them all hotkeys, and then just walks out the door. Like that was the solution. We can't teach, we can't
Oh
teach all
no.
these people hotkeys, sir.
Uh,
So
oh my.
okay, so that's that. One thing that I also think stood out to me is you are, designers, UXers in general, the good ones, tend to be very empathetic people. So,
Yeah.
how did that sense of awareness impact you in this space?
Oh, well, immensely. I remember as a kid, I have memories of feeling other people's pain. And so like I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I realized later that wow, I'm an empath. Like I feel it deeply. And I think it's good, especially in this space. It is a good thing. I think it depends on your discipline, and I'll give a quick story as to what I mean by that. My so if you work in the medical profession, empathy is also very important. Too much empathy can be destructive. And that's a strong word, but it can be damaging. Let's say that. And my wife, so I will tell a quick story. In 2014, my wife, we found out we were pregnant. She was, not me. She did all the heavy lifting. So like we found out, that she was pregnant, and then we got our first ultrasound. We got some devastating news, and it was that our son had a malformation, rapidly growing tumor in his chest that was compressing his heart and lungs. And so we met with some surgeons, and actually the guy we met with created this surgery, which is nuts to me still. It's called open fetal surgery. He was one of the creators of that, and it's really, really intense, where they have to go into her uterus, into him in utero, remove the tumor, seal him up, put water back in the uterus, seal the uterus up, and seal her up, and call it done. It even listening, even that description sounds complex. Imagine doing that
Wow.
procedure.
Wow.
And so we met with one of the guys who at the time was working at a hospital that was a little far from us, but worth the drive. And he said you can do nothing and just wait for it to for the that maybe he'll outgrow the tumor. Like that seemed like a long shot. Or you can have this surgery, this very, very evasive, very intense surgery. And my wife, she opted for the latter. And like I said, like, well, I haven't said this yet, but I mean, I already had a lot of respect for my wife before that. After she went through that, she was my superhero. Like I just I couldn't. She was willing to lay her life down to save
Wow.
our son, and she did do that. And the good news was that the surgery was successful. They got I have pictures. I don't know if you've ever seen the picture of one of the early open fetals where you have this doctor and the baby's finger is like holding onto the surgeon's hand, like in utero. I have a picture like that of my son holding my surgeon's hand.
Wow.
And yeah, and so anyway, like that was a success. So like we were elated, like cloud nine, and then unfortunately what happens is anytime you disrupt nature, it's 100% premature birth.
Yeah.
And so like her water broke like 2 weeks later, and he was still way small. He was not barely over 20 weeks. And so I got her to the hospital, and they kept her pregnant for a while. All that to say, like because of all the medical intervention and everything, um, because of all that, there was infection introduced, and he got sepsis, and he passed away. He was born. And then he passed away the next day. So there's a lot of blessing and a lot of like hurt. Of course, it'll never heal that wound, but the blessing is that we have to actually meet him. Like I called his name, and he actually, when I called his name for the very first time before he was under a lot of medication, like he actually looked at me in the eyes one time, and I got a picture of that too. I'm really, really grateful. All that to say, this is a long story, but I'm getting to the point. Like after we lost him and he went to heaven, we one of the nurses that was working with us, she was really a beautiful person, and the challenge with having too much empathy in that field is that and again, for us, it was a beautiful moment. But I'm trying to put myself in her shoes, because the moment she saw my wife after that happened, and she knew, we lost our son, she just broke down with my wife and just like lost it with my wife, it was a beautiful moment for us. But I'm just imagining how hard that would be. We're just one case.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
just one case in that really difficult profession. Like I don't know. Like I think that would be an interesting conversation too, to talk to somebody, in that kind of space, to see how they deal with, being empathetic enough to actually where your patients feel cared for and heard, but also like not too empathetic to where you just can't sleep at night, and like you just are just crushed by the emotion every day, right?
Yeah.
Because that's a very emotional. That was a very emotional experience for.
I think when the first time I talked to you, I was a little bit concerned. I was like, is he gonna be like one of those people who's like scared of everything? Like, don't do this. We don't get on the internet. We don't use phones. We have foil everywhere. I was that's what I was expecting. That's what I was expecting. Like,
Well, I
okay,
am kind of like that.
don't trust
Talk to my
anybody.
wife. I'm very, yeah, trust but verify. I'm very, in God we trust, all others must provide data.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's I love to
That's
talk to
me.
people who work in IT security. Same thing. Like we don't trust anything. But going back to your story, that it is a lot, right? So you're thinking about what that felt like for you and your family, but then you had this nurse who's having to see that day after day, right? So then I'm hoping she had some coping mechanisms. What coping mechanisms did you have to put in place to deal with what you're seeing?
Uh, are you talking about like after that experience, or
Well,
like?
just thinking about like coming in contact with people from the dark web and having to,
Oh yeah.
like scope
Oh,
that out. Yeah.
gotcha. Yeah. That was really hard. I'll be honest. Like the first year, maybe even going into 2 years, just the content. Thankfully, our tool strips out all of the imagery and the videos and stuff. We don't have to see any of that, and I'm really grateful. And so are all of our analysts who don't have to. There's certain law enforcement who have to, and my heart goes out to these folks. And thankfully they only have to stay in that work usually for about 3 months at a time, because it's
Mhm.
just too damaging.
Mhm.
They have to rotate folks out. Anyway, thankfully our tool strips all that out. But even just seeing what people say and the kinds of horrible, horrible things that people say, and that their motivations, the Bible says, out of the heart, the abundance of the heart, the mouth speaks. So when you realize that everything that's actually you're reading is actually coming from someone's heart, like that, it just hurts you. You almost feel dirty, like you feel like you need a shower.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, after some of that. So I had a really hard time knowing that I didn't know it before, but after working in this space for a little while, knowing that there's human beings like that in this world, and actually, sadly, a lot of them. There's not everybody, and that this is the lesson. This is the lesson that I want to really try to illustrate. I had a really hard time because I was starting to associate a lot of the folks that I met with what I was experiencing in my day to day, and that was unfair. It really caused me to not love. I had a really hard time. I started getting numb, and I started like just feeling like this is really hard for me to not only to like you but to love you. And I just struggled with it. I did for a good year at least. But it was thankfully, I'm a Christian, and I really that's saved my life. That's another story, maybe for another day. But I realized I couldn't do this on my own anymore, because I was a former drug and alcohol abuser, major, major. I was Heisenberg's biggest customer. Yeah. So, the reality is that I after I started letting go of that and started like giving that to God, it made a big difference. And then, you work in a space, and you start to get used to things. And thankfully that's helped me. Just kind of, we're adaptable. I'm glad we're created that way. So I don't have that struggle anymore. And I realize that this work is important, and it's not going to stop me or slow me down. Like, I got to keep doing this and going to work. And again, thankfully our tool gets rid of all of the really, really damaging content.
Wow. Okay, so we'll change gears just a little bit because that was heavy. That was really
Yeah,
heavy.
sorry.
No, no. I think it's good to hear, because I think a lot of times when people think about UX or any type of design, they're thinking pixel pushing pretty pictures, right? And
Yeah.
depending on the content that you're working with, that could be very, very heavy, right? Because
Yeah.
you're having to get the information, and you can't do that without. And like I said, that's why I think good UXers are empathetic. So you do have to feel it. So you do have to be mindful of how are you taking that home with you, right? Are you
Yeah.
taking that stress home with you? Are you putting that on
Right.
other people? You have to be very
Right.
mindful of that. I don't think we cover that, right? When we're like, hey, you want to be a
Yeah.
UXer? This gets dark. Like we don't cover that all the time. So um
You're right.
thinking
Absolutely.
about you, one of the other things that I love about you, and I'm definitely a fan, was your podcast. So let's talk about the podcast a little bit. Um,
Sure.
Full disclosure, I wanted to interview you because I didn't hear you talk enough, right? Like I wanted your story. So I was like,
Oh,
we're
bless
gonna
you.
get into Jason's business. But let's talk about the podcast. What was the vision? Where did that come from?
Yeah, it came from a really long drive to work every day. When I was before I did become a remote worker, I worked at a company who sold ads before the movies. And you've seen my work. You've probably seen me on the screen. I was in a little commercial for about 5 years. That was me. I was the dentist, folks.
Oh,
Anyway,
let me go get
uh,
this clip. Let me go get Jason.
I have the clip. I can
Send
share it
me
with
the
you
clip, Jason.
if
Send
you
me
wanna
the
put it
clip.
on the website.
We're gonna get that
We
in the
can have some
video. Yes.
laughs. All right, we'll do it. I'll give it to you.
There's no business like your business at the movies. Your ad can be the star of the show. Reach your customers on the big screen in a distraction-free environment. Call 1-800-SCREEN1 today and write your own Hollywood ending.
So yeah, so I had a really long drive. I had just started my personal growth journey. It was 2015. I'll never forget. My boss at the time, he had asked me if I'd ever listened to a podcast by a guy named Pat Flynn, and he created a podcast called Smart Passive Income, and it happened to be the one episode, the latest episode, was how he started a morning routine by following Hal Elrod's Miracle Morning book, inspired by that. And I was like, I'd never thought about doing something like that. I just wake up for when I have to, right? I wake up for other people. I don't wake up for myself. Like I don't do that, you know. And then I actually what I heard on that day on that long drive home was that I need to actually start taking care of myself. And like crazy that was an epiphany, right? I'll be honest with you, I didn't care about myself that much before that, and it showed. You can ask my wife. I was not a very pleasant guy for quite a while. I was very unhealthy. That came out in my mood. I was very grumpy, irritable, all those things. Not a pleasant guy. And so I was like, I think this is what I need. And so anyway, I started my morning routine that Monday because it was a Friday. I drove home. I'm like, I'm going to do this. I was inspired. I'm like, I'm going to wake up at 5 in the morning, and I'm going to wake up for me, and I'm going to fill my cup. Because guess what? You can't pour an empty cup into another, can you?
No, you cannot.
You got to
That
fill your
that was
cup.
that was the saying that changed me. You cannot pour from an empty cup. You
You
cannot.
cannot. So it makes so much sense now, but I was like, my cup's been empty for so long, and no wonder I haven't been able to help people that much, right? And no wonder I've been so like inward focused and so just like my own bubble. And so like that was life changing for me. Waking up at 5 in the morning, it felt like Christmas morning. I it was quiet. There was nobody else awake. It was just me. And I was able to like actually start building myself up in all the ways I needed, spiritually, mentally, and physically. And I was able to do that every day. And it changed my life. And I started feeling really good, really healthy, a lot of like dopamine and serotonin, like all of a sudden, like filling me, where I just felt like I need to do something with this. Like I want to, I've been doing this for 20 years, at the time of 20 years. Like, how do I give back? Like, I think it's time for me to give back. And so like I had this idea driving to work, one really long drive one day, where I was listening to podcasts, and I was like, I wonder if I could do this. It was like this weird thought. I was like, what if, and it all like came together really quick. I've always said I fight for the users on my, Tron. Thank you, Tron. I've always put that on my LinkedIn and other, Twitter when I had it. And so I was like, what if I created a podcast that was from that perspective of helping designers like think about and learn how to fight for their users and how to also not only do that, but also build themselves up so they too can pour a full cup into someone else's empty cup. And so like that was the idea. That was the big idea. And then the superhero thing came shortly after. I was like, I need like some sort of like edge. I need some sort of like distinction. And I was, again, as you know, I was very into superheroes and comics, and the superhero movie, the Marvel movies were huge at the time. And so I was like, well, this makes a lot of sense. And so it just came to me as like user defenders. I was like, that's it. User, I fight for the user defenders. And I was like, that's the one. And I went and bought the domains. I got all the Gmail, I got the Gmail, I got, everything I could on the socials. And that's where it began.
That's incredible. One of the things that I'm hoping people are hearing from you talk, right, is I know my listeners probably think I'm telling everybody to jump ship and get out of UX. I'm not. But what I hope people take is you have a skill set, right? Like inherently now built into you to be able to pivot and explore some of these other things that you're interested in. Like, I'm just going to start a podcast. You didn't have to go pay a designer. You didn't have to, like, that stuff was just in you, right? And then being able to
Yes.
use that for something that you love doing. So we only have a couple minutes left, so I'll hit you with a couple of questions here.
Sure.
For you, a lot of design today is not as visually creative as it once was, or I think what a lot of people expect when they go into this space. So then, do you have a creative outlet today? And if so, what is it?
Oh wow. Oh wow, interesting. I think it's probably worship leading at my church.
Okay.
I'm on the worship team, and it's the one time it forces me to pick my guitar up. I got a guitar back there. I wish I played it more. I used to play a lot, and I've written a lot of songs earlier on. But anyway, like to me, that's probably my most creative outlet at this time, I would say.
Okay. So you
Yeah.
play the guitar. Do you sing as well?
I do, yeah.
Okay. You play any other
Yep.
instruments?
Not good.
Okay. You know, see, I
Yeah.
was just so thankful I got to ask you these questions because I was like, that is okay. All right. So that is what,
Yep. I'm
okay.
a hack.
Just look, learn everything. Learn everything.
Why
Um,
not? If you love it, do it. That's how I got my career. I don't have a college education. I'm a high school dropout. My highest level of education is GED, believe it or not.
Stop it.
I learned everything I could on my own and work and trying to surround myself with people smarter than me. And it
Okay, so
worked.
that's interesting. So
Yeah.
I have a 16-year-old. A lot of my friends have kids around the same age, right? And it's I think when I came out of high school, it was just like you're going to college, right? I can't tell my son
Right.
that with a straight face, right? I have no idea. So for those moms and those parents who are like, is my child going to find their way back? What made you what got you back to this, right? Like I'm going to drop out of high school, but you found a path. So how did you do that?
Again, it was just like my late great pop said when I asked him, like, how did you do this, Dad? Like, how did you be a part of like arguably the greatest human accomplishment still in history? And he's like, I just found myself at the right place at the right time. And I was like, yeah, Dad, but you were also brilliant. He was just super humble about it, but I mean, it's also true. He was on the Space Coast right at the dawn of space technology. He saw a missile flying overhead when he was in the river as a kid, casting his net, trying to do some fishing in Florida on the Space Coast, and he was in awe. And that was it for him. For me, it was very similar. Like again, like it was the perfect time. I had a background with computers. I loved art and design, and then all of that marriage, that perfect marriage of design and technology was met just in a beautiful way when the World Wide Web was introduced to us in the
Yeah.
90s.
Okay. So parents, listen, they'll find their way. I promise they will find
They
their way.
will.
All right. Let's see. Is there anything else that I should have asked you that I didn't think to that you would want to share with the audience?
Oh goodness.
I just want you to know while you're thinking about this. I feel like we'll need to do a part
Yeah,
two. I think we could have so
sure we
many
can.
other conversations. You have been so fun.
Thank you. Thank you, Adrian. And likewise, like I don't like to do this off the cuff, honestly, very often. And I will normally, and I don't do this all the time either. Like I've been on some podcasts, but like I was honored when you asked me. So thank you so much for having me. And then, I didn't know the questions before. And with you, I was like, let's just do this. Like, what, ask me whatever you want. Like, you were so good at this, and you make me feel so comfortable. I knew this would go great. So
Well, I have enjoyed it. Anything else you want to leave with the audience?
I think it's just kind of that theme what we were talking about. If you really love something, there's not the only thing that can stop you is yourself from doing it. It really doesn't matter what it is. If you are really passionate about something, and we watch The Voice as a family all the time, and you see, a lot of them are young folks, not all of them, but a lot of them are older folks too. And some of these older folks, I especially have so much respect for because they never gave up.
Yeah,
Right? It may have taken him 30 years, and you may not have that much time, but like I'm just the principle applies. Like if you really love something, like you're not going to be able to stop. You're going to find a way to make it happen. And thankfully, we live in an age where the entire canon of the human knowledge base is available in our pockets. And now even more easier to ask ChatGPT something. I don't remember the last time I Googled something, and Google's bottom line is starting to hurt as a result. But regardless, if you really love something, you'll figure it out. You'll figure it out, and you will. Nothing will stop you but yourself. And the only person you should ever try to be better than is yourself yesterday.
that's it. That's the only people we're competing with, ourselves
That's
from
it.
yesterday. Well, Jason,
Yep.
you have been simply delightful. I thank you for being so open and for sharing with us. There's so many things that I'm hoping the audience can take from this. I know I definitely will. I'm going to make sure that everybody has access to your LinkedIn page and they can go back into the UX Defender days and just enjoy all of that and then definitely follow you. So thank you so much for coming and joining us today.
Thank you, Adrian. I really appreciate it. This was really fun. Best to you.